All right, good morning, traders. This is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group with your Monday morning macro and index rundown. So I usually just do a quick 5-minute video on the value areas and kind of how we're setting up for the week. But there's a couple things moving this morning, so maybe I'll chat for another minute or two longer. One of the things that I find interesting is just the separation. This is last week's performance, so nothing really pressing here, other than just to kind of note that this has kind of been the case for a while now, and I think explains a little bit why the S&P is, people look at the S&P and they're like, wow, this thing's really not moving. There's not that much volume. But if you're just looking at the indices, you're really missing what's going on underneath the hood. And there's some really good sector separations, and this has been going on all year long. But just last week, you see a lot of we've got energy on the top of the list, a couple different energy ETFs up over 4%. You got REITs, home builders up well over 2%, and then you look at last week's decliners, and you have the banks kind of down just as much as the oil names were up, maybe a little bit more so. Metals and mining were also down. You can see steel, telecom, which continues to crater. But you kind of you add everything up, and you kind of look at this distribution, and to me it makes sense why the S&P isn't really moving, and it's not really something that I'm interested in trading, because you have this big separation going on week to week in sectors and obviously individual names, which I don't have listed, but I think it's just a good proxy for what's going on underneath the hood. So let me get over to what I want to talk about, which is the new weekly value areas and or this week's value areas. But let me first just go over international markets. It kind of sheds some light about, I think, why S&P futures are down about 20-25 basis points. Take a look at what's going on in Europe, down about 80 basis points. Euro stocks down just about the same. So I think that's causing a little bit of weakness. You could see the Nikkei really coming in pretty hard from that outside reversal day yesterday. Last week. Since then, since we had this big volume on this move higher, and then we closed lower in the Nikkei, it's been trailing lower, so down again, and again, very overbought. So to me, this kind of makes sense why it's taken a breather. So that's what's going on in overnight markets. Oil, copper, not really moving too much. So let's start to go into the chart. So let me just start. I'll start with S&P, because S&P 500. Everybody wants to talk about that one first. One thing to notice on the daily chart. This is the month's value area. We're still above value, but we're just sitting right at the top. Notice last week when we had that pullback on Thursday, we did come back pretty hard, but we violated the new November value area, but we came right back. So really the level to watch, the top of value for the month, is going to be this 2573. So you could jot down that level. I think that's a good level. If we happen to move into this, we could have some more chop. Basically, if once we start moving into the value area, it basically means chop, and we could also possibly move from one end to the other. So I think 2573, which is essentially where we are, is a good level to watch for the day, or excuse me, for this month, but definitely a level to watch. So next, I'd like to jump to the hour, and it looks like So this is the new value area for the week on the 1 hour bar, and it looks like we're opening the week below value. So the level to watch for resistance is 2577. We want to be back in that. Otherwise, we could have some weakness ahead of us. But really, 2577 is the bogey to watch for us to get back at least into the value area. 2590 to resume the uptrend that we're in. 5-minute bar, also weak. We've dropped below value, so pretty negative across the board here for S&P. 2574 is the level here that we want to get back into. You can see the break, retest, and a red bar forming. 2574 is the level to watch there. So NASDAQ, let me just back up and we'll start. That's also under pressure. We're down about 28 basis points, and I like to use the Qs. For this, I could use the futures as well, but we made this launch higher here in Nasdaq, and we're way above value, so we don't have support till 149.20, which is a ways away. The other thing you can maybe look at is the 20 period moving average, which is the blue line on my charts. And if we're closing into, we're ducking under the yellow line, which is the 5 period exponential. That your next support here on the daily is the 20 period moving average. Looking at some shorter time frames, we'll go to that 1 hour, which again is nice because it's a brand new value area for the week. This one we're starting in value for the week. Notice what we did. This was a real nice level to trade off last week. We did that in the trading room on Thursday. We kind of ran into that support of the top of value and we bounced. So we did pretty well making with a nice day trade last Thursday in the Qs. So this week, we notice how tight the value area is. Again, the value areas are always based on the prior period. It's one standard deviation around last week's move. So here's last week's move, and this is one standard deviation of the volume of last week. And the levels that we get is 153.13 bottom of value support and 153.87 resistance to continue with the uptrend. We're also just starting the day below value, like S&P. 153.31 is your bogey here for us to move back into value. Last one, IWM, and this one I think is also pretty interesting. I'll just start with the 5 minute. We'll do this a little bit backwards, but we're below value just like S&P and the Qs, but a little bit further undervalued. So 146.67 is your resistance. If we go over to the 1 hour, we're also going to be just at the bottom of value. That's 146.11. So this could change pretty quickly. We're just kind of sitting right at that bottom of value area. So I would watch that 146.11, and then on the upside 147.40. I would watch last week's lows as well, just like with S&P and the Qs. And here's where it gets a little bit more interesting, I think, for the small caps. And this one I'm watching more closely than S&P and the Qs. Why am I watching small caps a little bit more closely? Because they often lead. They're often a leading indicator, I think, anyway. So we're sitting right at the 50-day moving average. We're going to be a little bit below it here because this will not update on the daily chart until the open. So we're at a pivotal point here on the 50-day moving average. If we start to break lower, again, I would watch last week's low. If that violates, I would watch this VPOC here about 143.60, call it. So that's your downside target. And then upside, if we happen to get a little momentum on the open, 148.73 is your resistance. So right now, I love people on Twitter who like to make market predictions. I don't do any of that. I just watch the price, and that'll tell me enough of a hint which way we're going. But I think right here, this pivotal 50-day moving average will be interesting to see what happens. And if we start to break lower here in IWM, I think it won't be the best signal for the overall market in the short term. However, if we start to move higher and at least into this 148.73, could be is a good signal for the market. All right, so that's it for today's index rundown, and I do this video every Monday morning. And then what we do starting at 8:50 is we go over all single names and the upgrades and downgrades and movers and some of the setups that I'm interested. We do that every day in the Tribeca Trade Group room, in the trading room, every day starting at 8:50. We do that 8:50 to 9:30. So if you're interested in joining us, you could certainly send me an email, cfromhertz@gmail.com. You can see what it's all about. And, again, really, really good pre-market that we go over. And then obviously we have the live trading room as well. Thanks very much for watching. Have a great day.